Okay, welcome back to another episode of HQ Weekly. I'm going to go back to last week and I'm going to refer to the clip that I mentioned at the beginning where it came to someone on YouTube giving interview advice and how I disagreed with their points. So I'm just going to watch the clip and then I'm going to refer to it as well.
So I wasted 15 minutes today in an interviewing an associate to join one of the real estate teams. The guy's never worked in real estate before, early 20s, asked me what commissions he'd be paid, asked me what hours he's expected to be there, and then went on to say, this is the question, give me 3 reasons why I should pick this employer versus someone else. I just said to the guy, I can't think of one. And I said, mate, let's just finish this off.
What I love is this kind of sneery tone. He kind of mocks the candidate for asking what I think are really sensible, good questions to ask. Because I don't understand why people think it's a negative to ask about specific details of the job. Like, of course he needs to know about how much commission he's paid. Of course he needs to know about what days he might get off. Of course he needs to know about what the structure of the environment he's going to be working in. Like, that's eminently sensible, because if you're going to commit 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is of your career to this person, it's very reasonable to find out that information.
So, yeah, I mean, last week I referred to it as he was asking about what time is his lunch break. So I got that quite a little bit wrong. But there was a few things that the reason why I wanted to come back to it, because I think this is really important information, especially for those who are not used to interviewing, those who are maybe going for their first interview, or those who are the more senior end of the experience and haven't interviewed for a very long time. This guy, by the way, his videos, look through all of them. There's some very, very useful information on there, but on this one, he's got it wrong. Not only did he mock the employer in the corner by referring to him having a sneery, mocking tone, in a sneery and mocking tone, it was more about the advice, really. It was really, I think he must have missed the bit at the beginning where the guy said, I spent 15 minutes in an interview. So what we're saying is, in the 15 minutes, somebody had come into his office who had no experience in that industry, was asking about commissions, was hours of work, and then was putting it across to him about why he should waste his time effectively working for him. I mean, I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. Interviews are about playing the game. Some of these are pertinent questions to come later in the process, but you don't really need to be asking them in the first 15 minutes. You need to sell yourself. You need to put across who you are as best possible. But in the first 15 minutes, asking about what you're going to get is really, really not the best way of going about it. Now, I'm hoping that going forward, we're going to be able to do a lot more advice when it comes to interviews and job seeking and what to do in certain negotiations as well. But we'll get to that later on. On this front, and I was talking to my colleagues about this, there is a fine balance between knowing your worth and coming across as being very cocky and a little bit too arrogant in some ways. And it is a really fine balance that you have to play when you're interviewing. Don't do that. don't spend the first 15 minutes like asking the person who's got the job that you might want to do, why should you waste your time being there? I think it's really, really important that you go in with set questions, that you've done your research, on the position, on the person, on the people out there, the management team, the company, anything that's available, and have those questions maybe perhaps for the end of the interview, but certainly not be leading in with them. In terms of the balance between knowing your worth and being too arrogant, perhaps, look at the role, look at what is needed, and really go through your CV and your experience and write down and prepare what you bring to the table. Because not enough people do this. Something that I bring up quite a lot when I'm preparing candidates for interviews is familiarize yourself with your CV. not a lot of people do that. Not a lot of people remind themselves of who they are and what they bring. I think that will help start shaping what it is that you bring to the table. If you're interested in any specific job market or interview advice and you want my opinion, please get in touch. Having said that, one of the things that I thought would be really interesting to talk about this week is, and it's something that my colleagues and I have been talking about recently, is trying to get across to those in the recruitment process about how to communicate with your recruiter. Now that could be the agency that you're using, so therefore, they're a third party, which is great, or it could be the in-house recruiter working for the company that you're interviewing with. Communication is absolutely key, and during my 2 decades and my colleagues a few years, we have seen almost everything. We've seen good communication, we've seen bad communication, but when it comes to communicating with your recruiter, it's vital that you share your thought process with them. Now, obviously, you have to have an element of trust with them. You have to build that trust over time, and hopefully, they've worked in such a way that you do trust them. But I mean, there's too many things to list on this front. But if you are having second thoughts, that's fine. But just let them know. If you are getting really busy and you've decided to put the whole search on the back burner, or something's happened to you personally or to your family or professionally, and you're not that enthused by it now, don't let them guess, is the only request, really. You need to tell them, because also they've then got to go back to the potential employer and explain why things have gone a little bit cold, perhaps, using this as an example. Now, if they've got nothing to say to that person because you've not told them, then we look bad, or they look bad, and also it puts you in not a particularly good light as well. So open lines of communication, using the recruiter as a trusted confidant, which is why I would always implore people to use a third party. And don't try to do it all on your own. Now, most lawyers that we work with, obviously very good negotiators, but in this case, use an expert. In much the same way as if I had to negotiate an M&A deal, I would use my legal team. When it comes to negotiating and working through a process for your own career, then use a recruiter, but be open with them and let them know all the facts. Because it's absolutely fine if you change your mind, or if you take another job, or you get promoted. Great, congratulations, brilliant. But if you're running the risk, if you don't let them know, that they may, that they won't be able to put you across in the best light, and then people will make up their own minds of why you are not in the process anymore. Now, open lines of communication, and just a final point on that, is also when it comes to negotiation. Now, look, I've worked with some of the top M&A lawyers in the world, and they are brilliant negotiators. But when it comes to their own remuneration, when it comes to moving, the preference has often been to use me as a third party. I am also, or my colleagues and I, we are also well-trained, well-versed, very experienced negotiators. And we know where the market sits. We know where you sit within that. We know what we can ask for in terms of certain points on that contract as well. And it's well worth you being open and honest with your recruiter to let them negotiate. Otherwise, to give you a bad example, to give you a good example of a bad scenario, I recently had it where a particular person was trying to withhold a lot of that information because of the perceived control element. They wanted to be in control of the process. They believed that they that they knew better. And in terms of the way, one of the things that, if you tie in communication and negotiation, one of the things that we put across very well is we'll know how to talk to the client. We'll know how that client wants things to be put across to them. And this particular person was working with was asking for a certain amount of money and was a certain benefits that might come with it. And ultimately, the way they've put it across, which is completely opposite to how I would have put it across to this client, has ended up upsetting the client, and that deal was likely to fall through. So it's very precarious, and communication is absolutely vital. Okay, and final point. We talked a little bit last week about the event that's coming up in June with University of Johannesburg. I can now give more details. It's a big event that UJ and the Office of the General Counsel are putting on about combating corporate corruption in South Africa. These types of events have been held before, but UJ, which is arguably one of the top university in the country, has never put this on. It's coming straight from the senior execs. It's going to be opened by the Vice Chancellor. The speakers, although not confirmed yet, will be confirmed this week, likely to include at least one ex-president, many of the top JSE listed chair people, many of the journalists that you know, many of the top bankers that you know, and people also very famous that are maybe in the press from the legal perspective as well. So it's going to be the who's who of business, talking very directly about how business can work together to combat corruption in corporate South Africa. I'm very excited about it. It's really taking shape. It's going to be the biggest event of its kind in the last decade. It's happening a month after the election, which could throw up some interesting guests and twists and turns. But you'll need to contact me for more details. And finally, look, just on the job market front, which we always try to give you, is we really are still looking for partners with those magic books of business. There are a lot of opportunities out there across the country when it comes to firms of all sizes, shapes and sizes. And if you've got the skills and you've got the client following, then you need to get in touch.